The last piece I want to read from the memoir is toward the end, and it's called Sanctuary. It's a quiet piece. I visited my mother's grave the first several years for the same reason I used to attend church. It was expected. It was meant to make me feel better. It was supposed to signify something. I stopped going for the same reasons I ceased attending weekly services. Catharsis by commission most likely satisfies only those who don't realize the game is rigged, spiritually speaking. Or else they do know it's a game and they wouldn't imagine it any other way. It's not the people with genuine faith the faithless have reservations about. It's the folks who find their faith so onerous or insufficient that it causes them to act in ways antithetical to the precepts they purportedly approve. The historical intersections of culture and psychology suggest that there can be no archetypal way to grieve, just as there are no ultimate answers for how we might reconcile our place in the world, including the non-place we're born and wherever we go when we die. But there's certainly a wrong way to grieve and grapple with the transient nature of existence. Anytime we're encouraged or obligated to follow a path someone else prescribes, particularly someone who's getting paid for the prescription, is a shortcut to resolution that we can only attain for ourselves. Cemeteries are like churches, created to contemplate people not accessible to those living. They serve as memorials, affording an opportunity to ponder this world and reconcile our place in it. I've been to the cemetery, and I don't mind going to the cemetery. From a purely aesthetic perspective, it's a lovingly constructed memento for departed souls. Names and ages and years connected by what all of us ultimately have in common. The cemetery is where my mother's body rests. Any place else I go is where she lived, where she still exists. Wherever I go, she accompanies me. But sometimes this isn't enough. So I return to the lake by my father's house, the house I grew up in, the house where my mother helped raise me, the house where we helped her die. The lake where I once caught sunfish, where I swam and drank my first beers. The lake where I skinny dipped with a girl across the street, not knowing what I'd do without clothes on dry land. The same lake I walked around during those last 2 weeks. My own routine once the August sun began its slow descent and most families sat down to dinner. The only place I was ever alone those last 2 weeks, a respite from crowded and uncomfortable thoughts, a retreat for the inevitable rituals of adulthood. The same lake where my father and I ended up later that final night, after it was over and my sister returned to her family. The lake we silently circled, not saying much, not needing to do anything other than exist. This is where I go. I return to this lake. This is my church, my sanctified place for reflection. The water flows and recedes, feeding and restoring itself. The trees surround the water, their leaves emblems of nature's enduring procession. The sky stares down impassively to see its ancient face, reflecting up. At night, the stars strain toward the earth, fulfilling their preordained purpose.